The heartbeat of the four-cylinder. There's a saying in the car world, real performance starts at 6 cylinders. And for decades, people believed it. The inline-6 had smoothness. The V8 had thunder. 12 had prestige. But quietly, in the background, the humble four-cylinder engine was doing something no other. Configuration could. It was democratizing performance. Because while the world drooled over Ferraris and Corvettes, it was the four-cylinder that put genuine driving excitement into driveways, garages, and backroads all over the planet. It didn't need to roar to make an impression. It just needed to work brilliantly. The unsung hero of every era. From the very first Volkswagen Golf GTI in the late 1970s, the message was clear: you don't need a big engine to have big fun. That tiny 1.6-liter 4 didn't sound like much, but it transformed the idea of what a driver's car could be. It wasn't about brute force, it was about balance. Lightweight, tossable, affordable, and thrilling in ways that muscle cars couldn't match. As the decades rolled on, that same formula kept evolving. The Honda Civics, Mazda MX-5s, and Toyota AE86 S of the world proved that you could get performance, reliability, and soul, all with 4 pistons and a good gearbox. In the 90s, it wasn't just about efficiency anymore. It was about expression. Tuners, racers, and dreamers all started with the same blank canvas, a four-cylinder waiting to be pushed beyond its limits. Why 4 is the magic number. What makes the four-cylinder so special isn't just its ubiquity, it's its versatility. It can be efficient, or it can be outrageous. It can power a Corolla, or it can power a Porsche 718 Cayman. Turbocharged, hybridized, or naturally aspirated, it adapts to whatever the era demands. It's been in rally cars, drift cars, hyper-efficient commuters, and million-dollar exotics. The secret is balance. Four cylinders keep the weight low and the nose light. They let engineers fine-tune chassis dynamics without being overpowered by brute torque. And for drivers, rail drivers, that translates to one thing: connection. That's why so many enthusiasts on forums, tracks, and late-night drives talk about four cylinders. Not as a compromise, but as the purest form of driving. The everyman's engine. In a way, the four-cylinder is the most democratic power plant ever built. It's the engine of choice for the people who don't need validation from badges or cylinder counts. It's what made performance accessible. When a young driver bought a used Integra Type R or a Mazda Miata in the early 2000s, weren't just buying a cheap car, they were buying entry into a world where handling, revs, and feel mattered more than status. The four-cylinder was the key that unlocked that world. You didn't need to be rich. You just needed to love cars. The shift to today. Fast forward to 2026, and the world has changed, but the heartbeat hasn't. The four-cylinder is now turbocharged, hybridized, and tuned by computers instead of carburetors. But the spirit remains. You'll find it in cars like the Honda Civic Type R FL5, with 315 horsepower and some of the sharpest front-wheel drive handling on Earth. Or the Toyota GR86, proving that naturally aspirated fun is still alive. Even in the world of luxury performance, Mercedes-AMG's A45 S and Porsche's 718 Cayman GTS 4.0, the same philosophy carries through: lightweight, responsive, driver-focused performance. The numbers have gone up, the technology has evolved, but the essence? It's unchanged. Why this video exists. So today, we're doing something special. We're not just counting horsepower or quoting lap times, we're tracing a legacy. From the cars that started the movement to the ones that are still carrying it forward in 2026. We'll look at the pioneers, the ones that made the world believe four cylinders could be thrilling. We'll revisit the legends, the 1990s and 2000s icons that shaped entire generations of car culture. And we'll end with the modern masters, the ones proving that the four-cylinder still has plenty of fight left in the electric era. 50 cars. 50 milestones. One message: the four-cylinder engine didn't just survive, it defined the modern car. A final thought before we begin. You can measure speed. You can measure power. But you can't measure the feeling of a perfectly tuned four-cylinder on a winding road. Sound, the feedback, the way it rewards precision instead of aggression. That's the magic we're celebrating today. So, buckle up. Because whether you grew up with a Civic C poster or dream of a Cayman GTS, this one's for everyone who ever fell in love with the sound of a small engine doing something extraordinary. Welcome to the 50 greatest four-cylinder cars of all time, and the ones you can still buy in 2026. This is Next Gear. The Pioneers. Before turbochargers were common, before hot hatches became a genre, and before horsepower was a selling point on every spec sheet, there was simplicity. 4 pistons. Modest displacement. Mechanical connection. The 1970s and 80s gave us the blueprint for everything the four-cylinder car would become. These weren't just vehicles, they were statements that small engines could deliver big thrills. Volkswagen Golf GTI Mk1. Let's start with the one that defined an entire category, the Volkswagen Golf GTI Mk1. The idea was almost accidental. VW engineers wanted to build something fun out of the everyday Golf, which was never meant to be sporty. They swapped in a 1.6-liter fuel-injected inline-4 making 110 horsepower, small by modern standards, but revolutionary at the time. What made the GTI special wasn't brute power, it was how it used that power. Lightweight, nimble, and eager, it handled like a go-kart and could humble cars twice its size on a twisty road. It wasn't loud or dramatic, it was sharp, mechanical, and perfectly balanced. The Mk1 GTI didn't just invent the hot hatch, it democratized fun. It proved that performance didn't have to come with a luxury badge or a big engine. And almost 50 years later, that idea still drives everything from the Civic C to the Hyundai Elantra N. Honda Civic CVCC. While Europe was discovering fun on a budget, Japan was figuring out how to make efficiency exciting. The Honda Civic CVCC, compound vortex-controlled combustion, wasn't about horsepower, it was about intelligence. Its 1.5-liter inline-4 could meet emission standards without a catalytic converter, a genius bit of engineering when everyone else was struggling. But Honda being Honda, they couldn't stop it clever, they made it fun. By the mid-1980s, the Civic C appeared with a rev-happy 1.6-liter engine and Honda's signature lightweight handling. It was the moment when economy car and enthusiast car started to overlap. The Civic C made driving feel pure again, a theme Honda would perfect over the next decades. Its DNA still lives on today in the Civic Type R, a direct descendant of the simple, playful four-banger that started it all. Toyota AE86. Few cars have achieved myth status like the Toyota AE86. On paper, it's just a lightweight coupe with a 1.6-liter inline-4. But that 4A GE engine, twin-cam, high-revving, and eager, turned every drive into an event. The AE86 wasn't about straight-line speed. It was about control. Rear-wheel drive, perfect. Balance, and a willingness to dance. It became a favorite for both grassroots racers and drifters. Then came Initial D, the Japanese anime that made the car a cultural icon, immortalizing the sound of its screaming four-cylinder echoing through mountain passes. The AE86 proved that passion and purity mattered more than numbers. It's why decades later, Toyota's GR86 still carries that same philosophy, a small engine, rear-wheel drive, and joy you can feel through your fingertips. Ford Escort RS Turbo. Meanwhile, in Europe, Ford was embracing turbocharging long before it became mainstream. The Escort RS Turbo took the humble Escort and injected it with a 1.6-liter Garrett turbocharged inline-4 pushing 132 horsepower, serious punch for the 80s. It was loud, unpredictable, and full of attitude. Torque steer, plenty. Turbo lag? Absolutely. But when that boost kicked in, the RS Turbo came alive in a way no V8 muscle car could replicate. It wasn't perfect, it was raw, rebellious, and exactly what made 1980s performance cars exciting. The Escort RS Turbo marked the beginning of Ford's hot hatch dynasty, a lineage that would eventually evolve into today's Focus ST and RS models. It showed the world that a small turbo engine could be thrilling, even when it was slightly unhinged. Peugeot 205 GTI. If the Golf GTI was the original hot hatch, the Peugeot 205 GTI was the one that perfected it. Ask any enthusiast who drove both, and they'll tell you, the 205 felt alive. Its 1.6-liter and later 1.9-liter inline-4 engines weren't the most powerful, but they delivered every ounce of performance with personality. The chassis was perfectly balanced, the steering razor-sharp, and the weight distribution ideal. The 205 GTI could out-corner cars costing 3 times as much. But more than that, it was soulful. It turned even mundane commutes into something to look forward to. Even today, collectors chase clean examples not for nostalgia, but because the 205 GTI remains one of the best handling cars ever made, proof that you don't need a big engine to make magic. Porsche 944 Turbo. Yes, a Porsche with a 4-cylinder. In the mid-1980s, Porsche shocked purists with a 944 Turbo, a front-engine, rear-wheel drive sports car powered by a 2.5-liter turbocharged inline-4. Some scoffed. A 4-cylinder Porsche. But those who drove it changed their tune fast. The 944 Turbo was a masterpiece of balance and engineering. Its near 50-50 weight distribution made it incredibly precise. The turbo engine, derived from Porsche's endurance racing program, gave it acceleration that could rival a 911 of the same era. It wasn't about prestige, it was about precision. And that's what made it special. The 944 Turbo taught the world that performance could come in unconventional packages, a lesson Porsche continues to apply even in its modern turbocharged lineup. Saab 900 Turbo. The Saab 900 Turbo was the car that made turbocharging practical for the masses. Before Saab, turbocharged cars were fragile, finicky, and unpredictable. Saab changed that. With its robust 2.0-liter inline-4, the 900 Turbo combined Scandinavian engineering with a dose of everyday usability. It was fast, comfortable, and oddly futuristic. A car that could do 120 miles per hour on the Autobahn, yet cruise calmly through city streets. But what made the 900 Turbo revolutionary wasn't just its power, it was its character. Turbo lag became part of the charm. That whoosh and surge of power felt like flying a jet, which was fitting given Saab's aerospace roots. Without the 900 Turbo, the modern performance hatch might never have existed. It showed that forced induction could enhance daily driving instead of ruining it. Alfa Romeo Alfa Sud. Then there was Italy, a country known for emotional cars, not rational ones. The Alfa Sud proved that passion could fit inside a small, 4-cylinder box. Its flat-4 boxer engine gave it a low center of gravity and a sound unlike anything else in its class. Lightweight, nimble, and utterly alive on the road, it embodied what made Italian cars so addictive. Sure, it rusted faster than you could wax it, and reliability wasn't its strong suit. But when you were behind the wheel, none of that mattered. The steering was communicative, the chassis playful, and the engine eager. It reminded drivers that driving isn't about perfection, it's about feeling. The Alfa Sud and Sprint laid the groundwork for cars like the modern Alfa Romeo Giulia and Tonale, proof that small engines can still deliver big emotion. Datsun 510. Technically born in the late 60s but thriving into the early 70s, the Datsun 510 deserves its spot here. Its 1.6-liter inline-4 might not sound like much, but it was paired with fully independent suspension, unheard of in its price range at the time. The 510 was Japan's answer to the BMW 2002, affordable, tossable, and surprisingly capable. On track. In SCCA racing, It became a legend, beating European rivals and earning its nickname, the poor man's BMW. For many enthusiasts, the 510 was their first taste of motorsport performance. It proved that engineering brilliance didn't have to come with a German accent or a premium badge. BMW E3318 is. By the late 1980s, BMW had already perfected the art of the inline six. But then came the E30. 318 is a return to simplicity. Under the hood sat the 1.8-liter M42 DOHC four-cylinder, smooth, responsive, and willing to. The car was nicknamed the Baby M3 for a reason. It delivered the same balance and handling, precision as its bigger sibling, without the maintenance headaches or cost. It was the perfect driver's car, light, connected, and honest. The 318 is showed that even BMW understood the appeal of the four-cylinder formula. Today it stands as one of the most respected entry-level classics, a car that captures the essence of driving purity in a way few modern machines can match. The legacy of the pioneers. By the end of the 1980s, the four-cylinder engine had done something extraordinary. It had changed the definition of performance. It wasn't just an economy choice anymore. It was a statement. From Germany to Japan, from rally stages to urban streets, the message was universal. Small engines could create big legends. These cars didn't rely on horsepower wars or marketing gimmicks. They relied on engagement, on the bond between driver and machine. They made you feel fast, even when you weren't breaking records. And that, more than anything else, is why these pioneers still matter. They're not just the past, they're the blueprint for everything the four-cylinder engine became. The Golden Age. If the 1970s and 80s were the era of invention, the 1990s were the age of perfection. By this point, manufacturers across Japan, Europe, and the US had mastered the small engine formula, and the four-cylinder was no longer just an efficient option. It was the performance benchmark. Turbocharging, lightweight construction, high-revving VTEC systems, and motorsport-inspired engineering turned this decade into a golden chapter for car enthusiasts everywhere. The four-cylinder wasn't the underdog anymore. It was the star. Acura Integra Type R. If there's a Mount Rushmore of four-cylinder cars, the Integra Type R sits right at the top. Honda took a humble front-wheel drive coupe and turned it into one of the greatest driver's cars ever made. Its 1.8-liter B18C5 VTEC engine made 197 horsepower, a huge number for a naturally aspirated four-cylinder in the 90s, but it wasn't the power that defined it. It was the way it revved. 8,400 revolutions per minute. Perfect throttle response. No turbo lag, no wasted movement. Every shift, every blip, felt like an event. The Type R was built with obsessive precision, hand-polished intake ports, lightweight pistons, a seam-welded chassis, limited slip differential, and a close-ratio gearbox. It wasn't about comfort. It was about purity. No car better represented the philosophy of less is more. The Integra Type R taught a generation of drivers that a four-cylinder could feel like a race engine. Raw, emotional, mechanical perfection. Even today, the Type R stands as a benchmark. Every Civic Type R since has chased that same high. Few have reached it. Mazda MX-5 Miata. The Miata didn't just define the 90s, it revived the concept of the lightweight roadster. Altogether, with its 1.6 and later 1.8-liter inline-4, it was never about straight-line speed. It was about connection, steering feel, balance, and simplicity. At just over 2,000 pounds, the Miata was proof that slow car fast could be infinitely more fun than fast car bored. It didn't care about ego. It cared about experience. Every input mattered: steering, throttle, clutch, gear lever. It was the closest thing to automotive meditation. The Miata became a cultural phenomenon because it was accessible, both in price and in philosophy. You didn't need skill to enjoy it, but it rewarded mastery endlessly. It became a staple of autocross, track days, and weekend drives, and 4 decades later it still carries that same DNA. In a world obsessed with speed, the Miata reminded everyone that joy doesn't come from power. It comes from feel. Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX. Before the Fast and Furious franchise turned it into a movie star, the Eclipse GSX was a real-world sleeper. Its 2.0-liter turbocharged inline-4, the 4G63T, was a masterpiece, delivering 210 horsepower through an all-wheel drive system that gave it rally-level grip. The GSX was part of the DSM trio, Diamond Star Motors, alongside the Eagle Talon and Plymouth Laser, cars that offered high-tech turbo performance at a price the average enthusiast could actually afford. What made the Eclipse special was how much performance it packed into such a modest package. It wasn't refined, but it was relentless. Turbo lag? Plenty. But once the boost hit, it was like getting kicked by a jet. For a generation of tuners, the Eclipse was the gateway drug, an entry point into a culture where 4 cylinders could dominate drag strips and mountain roads alike. Nissan 240 SX. In the 90s, if you wanted rear-wheel drive and balance on a budget, you went with the 240 SX. Powered by Nissan's AMG A45 S, a 2.4-liter inline-4 originally designed for trucks, it wasn't the most powerful car, but it had the perfect chassis for tuning. The 240 SX became the canvas of an entire generation. Drifters, street racers, and grassroots builders turned it into whatever they wanted. Turbocharged monsters, show cars, or track weapons. Its simplicity was its strength. It didn't come with fancy electronics or modes, just raw potential. You could feel everything through the steering wheel, and that's what made it addictive. The 240 SX represented the golden rule of performance. A good platform matters more than a big engine. It's the reason its successors, the Silvia, 350Z, and even the modern Z, still owe it a debt of gratitude. Subaru Impreza WRX. Few names in motorsport carry the weight of WRX. Born from rallying, the Subaru Impreza WRX made all-wheel drive and turbocharging mainstream. Its 2.0-liter flat-4 boxer engine produced 240 horsepower in Japan and a bit less in export markets, but power was never the main story. Traction was. The WRX was about control, about maintaining grip where other cars lost it. What made the WRX a legend was its dual personality. Monday through Friday it was a practical sedan. On weekends, it was a rally weapon. With its burbling exhaust note, boxy stance, and unbeatable performance in the wet, it became the car for people who didn't want to slow down, rain or shine. The 1990s WRX wasn't refined, but it was unstoppable. It created an entire subculture, one that still thrives today in every blue and gold livery, every gravel-streaked corner, every turbo whistle echoing through mountain roads. Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution. If the WRX was the hero, the Evo was the anti-hero. Powered by the same 4G63T engine as the Eclipse GSX but refined through rally dominance, the Lancer Evolution turned Mitsubishi into a household name among enthusiasts. The Evo's 2.0-liter Turbo 4 made around 280 horsepower in Japanese spec, but it wasn't just about raw numbers. It was the way it used that power. Active differentials, razor-sharp steering, and the lightest chassis of its class made it lethal on any surface. Where the WRX felt playful, the Evo felt surgical. It didn't ask, it demanded. Driving an Evo fast was like piloting a fighter jet through corners, brutal, direct, and exhilarating. The Evo 4 through 6 era was when the rivalry truly peaked, two small 4-cylinder sedans going head-to-head on rally stages around the world. And for enthusiasts, it was heaven. Volkswagen GTI MK3 and MK4. After creating the original hot hatch, Volkswagen spent the 1990s refining it. The MK3 GTI introduced more comfort and safety, while the MK4, especially the 1.8T model, brought turbocharging into the mainstream for VW fans. The 1.8T inline-4 produced around 180 horsepower, but it was its tuning potential that turned it into a legend. With a simple ECU tune and a few bolt-ons, it could rival cars twice its price. The MK4 GTI wasn't as raw as the original, but it became a gateway into Euro tuning culture. Clean builds, subtle styling, and turbo performance made it the everyday enthusiast's car. It bridged the gap between practicality and passion, a formula VW still uses today in the GTI. MK 8.5. Toyota Celica GT4. The Celica GT4 was Toyota's ultimate four-cylinder rally weapon. Under its sleek coupe body was a 2.0-liter turbocharged inline-4 3S GTE, making up to 255 horsepower and sending it through an advanced AWD system. This was no poser, it was born from the World Rally Championship, where it went wheel-to-wheel with Evos and WRXs. It had adjustable center differentials, air-to-water intercooling, and technology that bordered on over-engineered. The Celica GT4 wasn't just fast, it was bulletproof. The 3S GTE became one of Toyota's most legendary engines, used later in the MR2 Turbo and countless swaps. It was the definition of race car for the road. And while the Celica name eventually faded, its DNA lives on in the modern GR Yaris and GR Corolla, both spiritual successors to this 90s rally legend. Honda S2000. Yes, it launched at the tail end of the decade, but the Honda S2000 deserves its spot here, because it represents the peak of naturally aspirated four-cylinder engineering. The 2.0-liter F20C produced 240 horsepower and revved to 9,000 revolutions per minute. That's motorcycle territory. It was a car that felt alive only when pushed to its limits. Below 6,000 revolutions per minute, it was calm. Above that, it screamed like a banshee. Every part of the S2000 was precision engineered, from the rigid X-bone chassis to the perfectly weighted steering. It was a convertible that handled like a race car. In an era where turbos were taking over, the S2000 was Honda's love letter to purity. Even today, number 4-cylinder has matched its combination of balance, sound, and mechanical perfection. It's a car that doesn't just ask to be driven, it begs for it. Peugeot 306 GTI 6. Europe's forgotten gem. The 306 GTI 6 was one of the finest handling hot hatches ever built. Its 2.0-liter 16-valve inline-4 paired with a 6-speed manual gearbox, rare for its time, delivered just 167 horsepower but infinite engagement. The chassis tuning was pure Peugeot magic. Sharp turn-in, compliant ride, and a front end that seemed to defy physics. It made every corner an event. While it never gained the cult following of Japanese icons, those who've driven one know, the 306 GTI 6 was a revelation. It proved that handling finesse could be as exciting as outright power, a lesson that remains relevant to every lightweight car built since. The golden standard. By the end of the 1990s, the four-cylinder had conquered every arena: racing, rallying, tuning, and daily driving. This was the era when balance, not brute force, defined greatness. The Integra Type R, Miata, and S2000 captured the soul of driving. The WRX, Evo, and Celica GT4 dominated the dirt. The 240SX and Eclipse inspired millions to build, tune, and dream. The four-cylinder wasn't just surviving, it was leading. Every car that came after owes something to this golden generation, the decade when four-cylinders proved they didn't need validation from anything bigger. They already ruled the world. The Turbo Revolution. By the dawn of the 21st century, technology had finally caught up with ambition. Electronic fuel injection, direct turbo control, variable valve timing, these weren't exotic features anymore. They were everywhere. The four-cylinder engine, once seen as the sensible choice, had become the weapon of choice for engineers who wanted to push performance without excess. And the results were spectacular. The 2000s gave us cars that redefined power-to-weight ratios, handling finesse, and the way turbocharging could feel. This was the age when 4 cylinders didn't whisper. They roared. Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution. The Evo had already proven itself a rally king in the 1990s, but the 8th and 9th generations took that legend global. Under the hood sat the now iconic 4G63T, a 2.0-liter turbocharged inline-4 that could handle ridiculous amounts of boost. The Evo 8 and 9 weren't just fast, they were surgical. Active center differentials, super AYC torque vectoring, and a chassis so communicative it felt alive. It was the first time American buyers could experience the raw, rally-bred ferocity that had made the Evo a cult icon in Japan. The Evo 9, especially the MR, became a tuner's dream, 300 horsepower stock, 500 plus easily attainable with a tune. It wasn't refined, but it didn't care. The Evo was about control through chaos, the feeling of bending physics, one turbo surge at a time. Even today, the Evo 9 stands as one of the most capable 4-cylinder cars ever built. It's the high watermark of turbocharged insanity. Subaru WRX STI. Every hero needs a rival, and for the Evo, that was the Subaru WRX STI. In 2004, it officially arrived in the US, bringing with it a 2.5-liter turbocharged flat-4, massive wing, and a soundtrack that could wake a forest. The STI wasn't about polish, it was about purpose. A mechanical symphony of differentials, clutches, and gears, it rewarded commitment and punished hesitation. It was the car for people who wanted to drive, not pose. While it was heavier than the Evo, it offered a sense of rugged durability, a rally tank with personality. The rumble from its unequal-length headers became instantly recognizable, the war cry of every backroad enthusiast. Together, the Evo and STI defined an era, 2 4-cylinder monsters born from competition, locked in eternal combat. Mazda Speed 3. When Mazda decided to build a hot hatch, they didn't just want to compete, they wanted to surprise. The Mazda Speed 3 arrived with a 2.3-liter turbocharged inline-4 making 263 horsepower, an absurd amount for a front-wheel drive hatch in 2007. It was wild, hilarious, and completely unhinged. Torque steer was vicious, grip was limited, but fun. Off the charts. Every drive felt like a fight between driver and machine, and that's exactly what made it so addictive. Mazda's genius was hiding that madness inside a practical, everyday shape. You could drop the kids off at school and then terrify yourself on the way home. It was the Jekyll and Hyde of hot hatches, half commuter, half chaos. The Mazda Speed 3 wasn't refined, but it didn't need to be. It was one of the last truly analog turbo hatches, and its spirit lives on in Mazda's unwavering commitment to making cars feel alive. Volkswagen Golf GTI MK5. After the lukewarm MK3 and MK4 generations, VW rediscovered the GTI's magic with the MK5. This was the comeback story. Powered by a 2.0-liter turbocharged direct-injection inline-4, the EA113, it produced 200 horsepower and, more importantly, torque everywhere. It was the first GTI in years that felt fast, fluid, and fun. The MK5 brought refinement without losing soul, crisp steering, great suspension tuning, and a cabin that felt like a class above. It was the hot hatch that made enthusiasts fall in love again, and it re-established the GTI as the gold standard for balance. And for tuners, it was a blank canvas. With a simple tune, it could embarrass far more expensive cars. The MK5 GTI wasn't just a return to form, it was a rebirth. Mini Cooper S. Before BMW turned Mini into a lifestyle brand, the R53 Cooper S was a proper driver's car. Under its tiny hood lived a 1.6-liter supercharged inline-4, delivering 163 horsepower of pure mischief. The R53 was raw, darty, and always eager to oversteer, a proper pocket rocket. The supercharger whine became its signature sound, making every trip feel like a cartoon chase. The car's short wheelbase and stiff suspension meant it wasn't the most comfortable, but it was alive in your hands. Every bump, every vibration, it was part of the dialogue between car and driver. It proved that fun didn't have to come from size or luxury, just engineering and attitude. Today's turbo minis are quicker, but none have quite the same charm. The R53 remains a cult classic for a reason. Ford Focus ST. Europe got it first, the US had to wait, but when it arrived, the Focus ST instantly proved Ford could do hot hatches as well as anyone. Its 2.5-liter turbocharged inline-5, yes, not a 4 in the earliest gen, gave it character, but the 2.0 EcoBoost that followed redefined it. By the early 2010s, the ST had evolved into the quintessential modern 4-cylinder hot hatch. 247 horsepower, razor-sharp steering, and torque vectoring magic that made front-wheel drive feel heroic. What made the ST great wasn't brute force, it was balance. Ford nailed the formula: accessible performance, real personality, and a chassis tuned by people who love cars. It became the everyman's performance car, fun at any speed, with a turbo engine that felt perfectly judged for the platform. Audi S3. If the GTI was the friendly everyday hero, the Audi S3 was its suit-wearing sibling. Using the same 2.0T engine but paired with quattro all-wheel drive, it offered grip, refinement, and composure in one sleek package. With 261 horsepower and DSG transmission options, it was fast, efficient, and ahead of its time. While some criticized it for being a little too polished, that was the point. The S3 wasn't about rawness, it was about confidence. It bridged the gap between the accessible GTI and the exotic Audi TT, giving enthusiasts a usable, year-round weapon that could handle any condition. In many ways, it foreshadowed the entire premium hot hatch trend we see today. Volvo C30T5. Volvo isn't the first brand you think of when you hear performance hatchback, but the C30T5 quietly became a cult favorite. Its 2.5-liter turbocharged inline-5, shared with the Focus ST, produced 227 horsepower and a soundtrack that could rival anything from Germany. The C30 was stylish, underrated, and surprisingly quick. Volvo wrapped its performance in Scandinavian restraint. It didn't shout, it whispered confidence. It wasn't a sales hit, but it aged beautifully. Today, it's remembered as one of the best hidden gems of the 2000s turbo era, proof that even safety-obsessed Volvo could have a wild side. Hyundai Genesis Coupe 2.0T. When Hyundai entered the rear-wheel drive sports coupe market, no one expected much. Then, they drove it. The Genesis Coupe 2.0T came with a 2.0-liter turbo 4 producing 210 to 275 horsepower, depending on year and tune. It wasn't perfect, the chassis was rough, and the early suspension tuning was harsh, but it had heart. This was Hyundai's declaration of intent. They could build performance cars, too. It became a tuner favorite, offering an affordable RWD platform with genuine power potential. More importantly, it marked a turning point for Hyundai's image, from commuter brand to contender. Without the Genesis Coupe, there would be no N division today. Honda Civic C. Even as turbocharging took over, Honda refused to give up on naturally aspirated magic. The K20 and K24 engines in the Civic C delivered some of the best VTEC experiences ever, revving past 8,000 revolutions per minute with a sound that could raise your pulse. The C was the spiritual successor to the Integra Type R, simple, mechanical, and focused. No turbos, no gimmicks, just perfect gear ratios, a balanced chassis, and a driver-focused cockpit. In a world chasing bigger numbers, the C reminded everyone that performance isn't always about acceleration, it's about engagement. It was the last great analog Honda before the modern turbo age began. The turbo era legacy. By the early 2010s, the 4-cylinder had done the impossible. It had replaced the 6-cylinder. In almost every performance segment, the Evo and STI proved 4 pistons could conquer rally stages. The GTI and Mazda Speed 3 showed that front-wheel drive could be thrilling. Even luxury brands like Audi and Volvo embraced the formula. This was the turbo era, the moment when the four-cylinder didn't just catch up, it took over. It was the point of no return, and from here on, things only got faster, smarter, and more efficient. The modern icons. By the time the 2010s hit their stride, the four-cylinder engine was no longer the compromise. It was the foundation of everything from hot hatches to luxury sedans, sports cars, and even crossovers that pretended to be sports cars. Turbocharging was now mainstream, dual-clutch gearboxes were everywhere, and power outputs that once belonged to supercars were now available in commuter cars. But it wasn't just about power, it was about precision. Manufacturers had learned how to make a four-cylinder car feel refined, exciting, and efficient, all at once. This was the era when the four-cylinder truly became the global default for performance. Honda Civic Type R. If the Integra Type R was Honda's perfection of the analog era, the Civic Type R was its digital masterpiece. The FK2 shocked the world in 2015, the first turbocharged Type R, with 306 horsepower from a 2.0-liter inline-4. Then came the FK8, and it took everything further, 316 horsepower, Nürburgring record lap times, and a chassis that blended track aggression with daily usability. What made the FK8 legendary wasn't just its performance, it was its execution. The steering was surgical, the gearbox was mechanical art, and the suspension was tuned so precisely it could make rough roads feel like silk. Yes, the styling divided opinions. It looked like a Gundam on caffeine, but on the road and track, it was untouchable. The FK8 proved that the four-cylinder hot hatch could take on, and often beat, sports cars, costing twice as much. Ford Focus RS. After years of waiting, America finally got the real Focus RS, and it was worth the hype. Powered by a 2.3-liter turbocharged EcoBoost inline-4 making 350 horsepower, the RS was pure hooligan energy. What made it special wasn't just the power, it was the drivetrain. The torque vectoring AWD system could literally send power to the rear wheels to induce controlled oversteer. Drift mode wasn't a gimmick, it was an invitation to misbehave. The RS felt like a rally car for the street, alive, twitchy, loud, and full of character. It demanded respect and rewarded confidence. Every launch, every shift, every corner felt like a challenge you wanted to win. The Focus RS reminded the world that even in the age of crossovers and electrification, driving still mattered, and a Turbo 4 could still make your heart race. Mercedes AMG A45. If anyone doubted that a four-cylinder could belong in a luxury performance brand, the AMG A45 shut them up instantly. Its 2.0-liter turbo engine, codenamed M133, made 355 horsepower, later 382 in the updated versions. This was an AMG, built with the same obsession as their V8S, hand-built engines, precise steering, dual-clutch gearbox, and AWD grip that bordered on absurd. It wasn't raw like a Civic Type R, it was precise, almost clinical, but devastatingly effective. The A45 and CLA45 proved that a four-cylinder could deliver genuine supercar pace without a supercar footprint. It set the tone for what the next generation of small performance cars could be: fast, efficient, and premium. Volkswagen Golf GTI MK7. This was the GTI at its modern peak, mature, balanced, and endlessly rewarding. The EA888 2.0-liter Turbo 4 was both powerful and refined, pushing out up to 245 horsepower in the performance pack. What made the MK7 GTI special was its finesse. It wasn't about overwhelming the driver, it was about making every moment satisfying. The steering was perfectly weighted, the chassis playful yet composed, and the interior genuinely premium. It was the car you could daily, track, or take on a road trip without a second thought. It captured the essence of what the GTI had always stood for: usable performance, accessible fun, and timeless design. The MK7 reminded everyone why the GTI is the yardstick for every other hot hatch. Hyundai Veloster N. Then came the surprise no one saw coming. Hyundai, once the punchline of performance jokes, unleashed the Veloster N, and it was fantastic. Under the hood was a 2.0-liter turbo 4 pushing 275 horsepower, tuned by former BMW M engineers. It had rev-matching, adaptive suspension, and a personality that screamed, "Fun first." What made the Veloster N so good wasn't just speed, it was feel. The manual gearbox was crisp, the exhaust popped and crackled like fireworks, and it handled with the kind of confidence usually reserved for German hot hatches. Hyundai had arrived, not as a value brand, but as a legitimate performance contender. The Veloster N became an instant classic, proof that passion and engineering could come from anywhere. Subaru BRZ. Not every great car needs a turbo. The BRZ and 86 Duo reminded the world that simplicity still has power. Their 2.0-liter naturally aspirated flat 4 wasn't about numbers, just 200 horsepower, but the balance, the steering, and the rear-wheel drive purity made every drive memorable. They weren't fast in a straight line, they didn't need to be. These cars were about the connection, the perfect shift, the slide through a corner, the balance you could feel in your fingertips. They were the spiritual successors to the AE86, and they carried that torch proudly. In an era of ever faster, ever heavier cars, the BRZ and 86 reminded everyone that lightness and honesty are performance virtues, too. Mazda 3 Turbo. Mazda returned to the turbo game with the 2.5-liter Skyactiv G Turbo, making up to 250 horsepower. But instead of chasing lap times, Mazda focused on feel. The new Mazda 3 Turbo is quiet, composed, and subtly quick, the grown-up evolution of the Mazda Speed 3. All-wheel drive gives it real traction, while the interior feels closer to a luxury car than a hot hatch. It's proof that maturity and performance can coexist, and that not every four-cylinder needs to shout to be taken seriously. It's the car for enthusiasts who've grown up, but haven't given up. Renault Megane RS Trophy. Europe's secret weapon, the Megane RS Trophy never got the fame it deserved outside the continent, but among drivers, it's legend. Its 1.8-liter turbo 4 delivered up to 300 horsepower and one of the sharpest front-wheel drive chassis ever built. The steering was telepathic, the suspension a masterclass, and the LSD made it feel like it could defy physics. Around the Nürburgring, it fought head-to-head with the Civic Type R, and sometimes won. The Megane RS was proof that front-wheel drive hadn't reached its limits. Engineers just had to care enough to push it. It remains one of the most complete driver's cars of its generation, even if it flew under the radar. BMW 230i. When BMW decided to go small again, enthusiasts cheered. The 230i, with its 2.0-liter turbo 4, brought back the feeling of the old E3318 is, but with modern refinement. It wasn't about raw speed, it was about balance. Rear-wheel drive, great steering, and just enough power to make every drive exciting. The 230i showed that BMW could still make a driver's car without needing 6 cylinders. It's a modern interpretation of the classic 4-cylinder coupe, elegant, agile, and rewarding. Volkswagen Golf R. The GTI's wilder sibling, the Golf R took the same 2.0-liter EA888 and turned the volume way up. With up to 315 horsepower, AWD, and DSG lightning-fast shifts, it became the perfect all-weather performance car. It could launch to 60 miles per hour in under 4 seconds, from a 4-cylinder hatchback. And yet, it could also cruise silently, carry groceries, and never break a sweat. The Golf R was proof that 4-cylinder performance had matured. It wasn't about rebellion anymore. It was about mastery. The modern mastery. By the early 2020s, the 4-cylinder engine had reached its zenith. Turbocharging, direct injection, hybrid assist, every innovation came together to create engines that were smaller, stronger, and smarter than ever. From the insane Civic Type R to the polished Golf R, from the playful Veloster N to the soulful BRZ, These cars covered every corner of the performance world. The four-cylinder wasn't just relevant, it was dominant. And in an era moving rapidly toward electrification, these modern icons may very well be remembered as the last great generation of pure internal combustion brilliance. The future 2020s and beyond. By the mid-2020s, the automotive landscape had changed dramatically. Electrification wasn't a buzzword anymore, it was the new normal. SUVs were everywhere. Hybrids dominated the sales charts, and pure gasoline engines seemed destined for history books. And yet, the four-cylinder refused to fade away. Instead of dying, it adapted. The modern four-cylinder engine became smarter, cleaner, and more powerful than ever, combining electric assistance, advanced turbocharging, and hybrid systems to create a new breed of performance. It's no longer just a mechanical component, it's a piece of integrated technology designed for both efficiency and excitement. The four-cylinder hasn't disappeared. It's evolved into the heart of the modern performance revolution. Honda Civic Type R. It's poetic that after nearly 3 decades of four-cylinder dominance, the Civic Type R still leads the pack. The latest FL5 generation is the culmination of everything Honda has learned about making small engines thrilling. The 2.0-liter turbocharged inline-4 produces 315 horsepower and 310 lb-ft of torque. Modest on paper, but breathtaking in execution. The throttle response is instant, the gearbox feels like a mechanical handshake, and the chassis tuning is near perfection. Honda managed to make the FL5 more refined without diluting the raw connection that made the FK8 so iconic. It's quieter, smoother, and yet faster around every track it touches. The Civic Type R isn't just the best four-cylinder car today, it's the best example of what the philosophy stands for: balance, emotion, and engineering purity. Toyota GR Corolla. Leave it to Toyota to build something nobody asked for, and make it incredible. The GR Corolla takes the GR Yaris's rally-bred 1.6-liter 3-cylinder and reimagines it for America, but don't let that extra cylinder count fool you, it belongs in this lineage. This is what happens when an automaker builds a car purely for drivers. 300 horsepower. 6-speed manual. AWD. 3 exhaust tips that sound like artillery. The GR Corolla is ferocious but friendly. It makes every road feel like a rally stage, every shift like a punch of adrenaline. It's proof that performance engineering isn't dying, it's just evolving. The GR Corolla may not have 4 cylinders, but it represents the 4-cylinder spirit better than almost any modern car. Light, aggressive, and joyful. Hyundai Elantra N. If the Veloster N was Hyundai's coming-of-age story, the Elantra N is the graduation speech. Using the same 2.0-liter Turbo 4, it delivers 276 horsepower, a wicked exhaust note, and dual-clutch precision that rivals European sports sedans. What sets it apart is how alive it feels. You can feel the engineers tuning it with a grin, the rev matching, the pops and crackles, the perfect balance of traction and tail-happy fun. It's a proper sports sedan in a world of hybrids and SUVs, unapologetically analog where everything else is digital. The Elantra N proves Hyundai didn't just learn from the greats, they joined them. Mercedes AMG A45 S. The A45 S isn't just another hot hatch. It's the most powerful production 4-cylinder car in the world. 416 horsepower. From 2 liters. That's over 200 horsepower per liter. Numbers that would make an F1 engineer proud. The engine, known as the M139, is hand-built in true AMG tradition. It's a masterpiece of modern engineering, twin-scroll turbo, roller bearings, dry sump, and a soundtrack that could pass for a baby supercar. The A45 S isn't subtle, but it doesn't need to be. It's the pinnacle of the turbo era, every bit of modern tech pushed to the absolute limit. And yet, it's drivable every day. It's proof that internal combustion isn't dead, it's just becoming art for those who still care. Volkswagen Golf R. The MK8 Golf R may not have reinvented the formula, but it refined it to perfection. 315 horsepower from the EA888 Evo 4 engine, all-wheel drive, and the option of a manual or DSG. It's the mature face of four-cylinder performance. The R isn't about fireworks, it's about confidence. It's a car that can handle snow, rain, or racetracks without ever breaking a sweat. In the age of electric torque, it remains one of the few cars that still makes power delivery feel earned. It's quiet, capable, and devastatingly fast, a reminder that refinement and excitement can still coexist in harmony. Audi S3/RS3. Audi's new S3 continues the lineage of small, turbocharged precision machines. With a 2.0-liter TFSI producing 306 horsepower, paired to Quattro AWD, it delivers effortless speed and grip. It's not loud or wild, it's surgical, almost understated. Where the Civic Type R is about raw passion, the S3 is about composed performance. It's the car for people who appreciate subtlety, where every detail, from the steering to the throttle response, feels engineered to perfection. And as EVs dominate headlines, the S3 quietly reminds us that sometimes the best technology is the one you can hear and feel. Mazda MX-5 Miata ND2. The Miata endures because you can't replace joy with technology. The ND generation brought back everything that made the original special, with just enough modern polish to make it timeless again. The 2.0-liter Sky Active G engine may only make 181 horsepower, but it feels like twice that, thanks to its lightness and balance. The steering is still perfect, the gearbox still clicky and mechanical, and the smile it creates still instant. In 2026, as cars get heavier and more digital, the Miata remains defiantly analog, a love letter to the human side of driving. Nissan Z Nismo. Okay, here's a twist. Not a four-cylinder, but it earns a mention for what it represents, the last generation of traditional performance before full electrification takes over. But Nissan hasn't forgotten the formula. Rumors suggest future Baby Z variants could use hybridized four-cylinder powertrains derived from the Renault-Nissan alliance. If that happens, the circle closes, Japan's original small-engine sports heritage reborn for the hybrid era. Toyota GR86. They're back. Older, wiser, and faster. The second-generation GR86 and BRZ bumped displacement to 2.4 liters, fixing the one flaw of the originals, torque. Now with 228 horsepower, improved mid-range, and the same telepathic handling, they've perfected the recipe. No gimmicks, no turbos, just honest, rear-drive fun. In a world that's trying to digitize every emotion, these cars are the analog heartbeat keeping driving alive. They prove that engagement matters more than numbers, and passion is timeless. Chevrolet Corvette E-Ray. Here's where the future gets interesting. The E-Ray isn't a four-cylinder, but it hints at what's next: electrified performance that can deliver both efficiency and fury. It's a hybrid supercar that uses electric torque to fill in where displacement used to rule. Now imagine that logic applied to the next generation of four-cylinders, compact hybrids with instant torque, razor-sharp throttle response, and no emissions guilt. That's where we're headed, not toward extinction, but evolution. The future of the four. The four-cylinder engine isn't going anywhere. It's just changing shape. In 2026, it's at the center of everything, powering sports cars, hybrids, luxury sedans, and even electric assist performance machines. From the Civic Type R's precision to the A45 S's insanity, from the Miata's purity to the Elantra N's defiance, these engines prove that small still matters. They represent the final generation of combustion passion, and maybe the blueprint for what's to come in the hybrid age. Because as long as people love driving, the four-cylinder will have a purpose. It may hum quieter or hide behind electric motors, but its heartbeat, that rhythmic, mechanical song, isn't done yet. It's simply learning a new rhythm for a new world. The end of an era. Now, as the world pivots toward electric power, it's easy to assume this chapter is closing. But maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just changing shape. Because even in the age of instant torque and silent acceleration, engineers are finding ways to keep that four-cylinder DNA alive, hybridized, electrified, reimagined. The heartbeat might sound different, but the spirit is still the same. And when the next generation of car lovers steps into a hybrid GR Corolla or a Civic Type R, with electric boost or a tiny roadster that hums instead of roars, they'll still feel it. A tribute to the drivers. This isn't just a list of engines. It's a love letter to every driver who ever downshifted on an empty road, to every tinkerer who squeezed an extra 5 horsepower from an old motor, to everyone who's ever smiled just from the sound of a perfectly timed rev match. You kept this legacy alive, not the manufacturers, not the marketers, you. Because you understood what it meant. The next time someone calls a four-cylinder boring, remind them, this little engine-powered legends. It beat Ferraris, won world championships, and gave millions their first taste of freedom. From backroads to racetracks, from student parking lots to Nürburgring laps, the four-cylinder has been everywhere, and it's not done yet. So here's to the past, the present, and the future. To every Civic, Miata, GTI, Type R, and turbocharged dream that keeps driving fun alive. Because no matter how far technology goes, there's one truth that'll never change. Driving isn't about the number of cylinders. It's about the number of smiles per mile.